Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Back for business. Gatwick Airport announces plans to reopen Terminal 2 as testing requirements are relaxed for travellers.
Easing the pressure on the NHS, work starts on a new care centre in Worthing to bring health services under one roof.
Also this Friday evening, we hear why the laws on gambling are ready to be tightened up.
If you apply for a credit card in this country, we're all means checked. You can start gambling on an online gambling site without any means checks.
And learning to drive, has it become so much easier for the electric generation? Good evening. Almost 2 years after it closed due to the pandemic, Gatwick Airport has announced flights will restart from its south terminal next month.
It comes as testing requirements for vaccinated passengers arriving into the UK are removed from today. The terminal will reopen on the 27th of March.
Well, our reporter James Dunham is at Gatwick for us tonight. James, how significant is today's announcement?
Oh, very significant, Stacey. This is one half of the UK's second busiest airport, but take a look around. The lights are still on, but it feels more like a ghost town. And listen, there is almost silence. Nobody excited to check in for their flight. No final boarding calls over the tannoy, just the hum from these unused kiosks. But with the government ending the requirement for all UK vaccinated arrivals to test, this airport believes it won't be too long before things feel more like normal here. The last time a passenger checked in here, the 14th of June 2020. COVID and testing a barrier for aviation, but with travel restrictions eased and this terminal reopening, I can see the smile on your face, you must be super excited. This is a good day for Gatwick's chief executive.
We can see the demand coming through, certainly in the early weeks of the summer season. We're planning to be very busy indeed, and that's what's led us to make this really important decision to open the South Terminal. And we're looking forward to a much more successful summer here at Gatwick in 2022.
The South Terminal will bring the airport to 700 arrivals and departures every day by Easter. At the moment, there are 400 from the North Terminal. Expansion by British Airways, EasyJet and Wizz Air helping to create thousands of much-needed jobs for nearby towns. When Gatwick struggles, Crawley suffers, and walking in the town centre today, that's evidently clear from the fact that you don't have to go too far to find an empty shop. A Gatwick-driven revival, game on, say business leaders.
The more people that come to Gatwick Airport, the better Crawley becomes. You know, you've got the crew, you've also got the people that are staying overnight before they go off somewhere. So, you know, all the local hospitality businesses will certainly pick up.
Obviously, nothing could have prepared you for the last 2 years.
Not at all, not at all. It's been a real hard period the last couple of years.
Having lost half his trade through the pandemic, airport growth means Adnan's rental car business is able to move forward again.
This is the most positive we've felt over the last 2 years. We actually know that there's a big difference coming with the airport actually making decisions which are for the medium to long term now. That means that we have the confidence to move forward as well.
There's certainly confidence at Gatwick. The airport thinks it will be almost as busy this summer as back in 2019. And that confidence is reflected in the fact that this February half-term, 768,000 passengers are expected through the North Terminal here, up 18,000 on Christmas, and both periods are normally like for like in terms of passenger numbers. The train service here will also improve over the coming months. The Gatwick Express will return this summer season. And talking of trains, we heard today from Eurostar, who said that some of its services this half-term are booked out, with it expecting 125,000 passengers over the next week. Encouraging signs because, of course, at the moment, Eurostar services aren't stopping at Ashford International or Ebbsfleet International until next year at the earliest. Back here, though, at the South Terminal, whilst it's not been business as usual, it's been actually used as a bit of a film set. Movies and TV shows like ITV's Grace have been produced here. But right now, the focus for staff is to ensure that all the equipment, the escalators, the check-in desk, the departure boards are back up and running, ready for passengers to return here, Stacey, next month.
Great news. James Dunham, thank you very much for that. And there's more details on that story on our website. Just head to itv.com/Meridian.
In other news, a light aircraft has crashed on a hillside near Sompting in Sussex, near Shoreham Airfield. 2 air ambulances were needed to fly casualties to hospital in Brighton. They're described as in a serious condition. Malcolm Shaw has just sent this update.
It was around 1 o'clock today that police were alerted to reports that a light aircraft had crashed on downland here at Titch Hill near Stenning. Police say that 2 men in the plane, believed to be the pilot and the passenger, were given medical attention at the scene. 2 air ambulances then took them to the Royal Sussex County Hospital in Brighton, where their condition was assessed as serious. Now, the location is a few miles north of Shoreham Airport. I understand that air accident investigators have been called to the scene to begin to try and establish why the plane came down. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Stenning.
Well, the long-awaited inquest into the deaths of 11 men in the Shoreham airshow disaster is likely to start in November and will take up to 6 weeks, but no final dates were agreed this afternoon at the pre-inquest review. In August 2015, a vintage Hawker Hunter jet crashed onto the A27 during an aerobatic display. The pilot was cleared of manslaughter by gross negligence. The coroner has been denied access to cockpit footage.
Kent County Council has voted not to renew a £5 million frontline service for rough sleepers and people at risk of becoming homeless. Charities say the decision to not renew the contract for Kent Homeless Connect in September will take away a vital lifeline. Last night's vote was today condemned by members of Swale Council, covering Sittingbourne and Sheppey.
This contract gives access to addiction assistance, debt management relief service, and to those with mental health and physical health issues. So that is those with real complex needs from the rough sleeping community. I think the lack of access, or the more difficult access to those services, will inevitably mean that some of those people fall through the cracks.
Well, Kent County Council says it's had to make the decision due to financial pressures caused by the pandemic.
Now, work has started on a multi-million-pound medical centre in Worthing. It will house GP, mental health and dentistry services, all under one roof.
It comes amid rising demand and pressure on the NHS, which is trying to work through the backlog of cases created by the pandemic. Tom Savides has our report.
The groundwork is being laid for a bigger and better NHS in Worthing. This site just behind the town hall is where a new medical centre is being built. In a year and a half, this will turn into this.
Will that mean actually closing other sites or services to put them here?
No other services will close. Other sites will close and will be reused for different purposes. But what it does mean is we're creating, for want of a better phrase, a one-stop shop, integrated health, where people could access a number of varying services to their own needs.
The complex will house GPs, dentists and mental health services. Scans, certain minor surgery and some treatments will also take place here, taking pressure off hospitals, where the waiting list in England stands at a record 6 million. £34 million is being spent on this new centre, which is due to open in the summer of 2023. But is it enough to cope with rising demand and pressure on the NHS?
Direction of travel for the NHS is to move services out of hospitals into the community, so it's closer for patients to access.
Funding has come from Worthing Council. The local MP, Sir Peter Bottomley, hinting that parts of southern England should also feature in the government's plans for levelling up.
To us, it's actually giving people in the centre of Worthing, where some of the wards have deprived people, they can start joining and take for granted the kinds of services which everybody ought to be able to have access to.
They may be laying the foundations for a future NHS, but the health service needs urgent attention to meet patient demand. Tom Savides, ITV News, Worthing.
A paranoid schizophrenic who was shot by police as he stabbed his teenage daughter has lost a High Court fight against the NHS trust providing his care. Mark Traylor from Hersden in Kent was found not guilty of the attempted murder of his daughter, Katana, in 2016 by reason of insanity. He'd not taken his medication. He claimed the Kent and Medway NHS Trust had been negligent in treating his illness. Katana also lost her claim that the Trust hadn't taken steps to protect her right to life.
A cordon has been placed around Hailsham Police Station in East Sussex after a suspected chemical substance was handed in to the front desk. The potentially dangerous items were brought to the station following a house clearance. Surrounding roads have been closed and people are being asked to avoid the area.
A teenager who stabbed a man in a supermarket in Margate has been jailed. Granvir Dada stabbed his victim 6 times after a fight broke out at Costcutter in North Down Road. The 19-year-old has been sentenced to 2 years and 7 months.
A badger has been rescued from the bottom of a sewage tank in Uckfield. The animal fell more than 10 feet into the empty well at a Southern Water Treatment Plant on Monday. After being checked over by vets, he was released back into the wild.
And a lurcher who was thrown over a fence in Dartford is recovering well. The RSPCA say the puppy, called Stanley, has come on leaps and bounds, and vets are hoping they've managed to save his leg, despite the ill treatment he endured.
Oh, some good news. And you're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, a smoother ride, learning how to drive without petrol, diesel or a gear stick.
And from America and lost, this little robin causing quite a stir in Sussex.
And you can find more on today's top stories on our website. Just go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.
Now, gambling firms could soon be forced to ask for pay slips from their customers to stop unaffordable losses.
At the moment, they only intervene if a customer has lost a huge sum of money, but some say this is not enough to prevent harm. It's one of many tighter regulations the government could introduce in their gambling review later this year. Amrit Birdie has more details.
Problem gambling has evolved in recent times, with apps and online betting making it easier than ever for those with an addiction to get a hit. What hasn't changed is the hundreds of gambling-related deaths every year. It's something Gambling Minister Chris Phipp has said he is determined to tackle in the first major review of gambling laws in 15 years. Gambling firms could be forced to ask for pay slips from punters to prove they can afford to play and potentially lose. Ian Semmel manages a gambling counselling agency in Brighton and says this strategy could make a real difference.
I think we certainly need affordability checks. I think anything that will minimise gambling-related harm and stop people losing more than they can afford to lose. How that works is a moot point, but anything where, what we all know is if you apply for a credit card in this country, we're all means checked. You can start gambling on an online gambling site without any means checks, so I really do welcome people being means checked.
However, the opinion of some recovered problem gamblers is that even though providing payslips could help many, it might not be enough to stop some slipping through the net.
I could have offered a payslip and without any additional checks or other operators being aware what I'd gambled with other operators themselves, I could have just gone from operator to operator. If you were to just spend £100 a month with every single one of those, all in the regulated market, then obviously that is going to be way beyond most people's means to be able to do so. But I do think if we can all work together basically and have this single customer view, I think that's perhaps the way to go, just to safeguard and perhaps like a soft cap so that people can't spend beyond the means, or at least limit the amount that they're able to spend.
The government says they are determined to protect vulnerable people at risk of harm, while giving adults the freedom to choose how to gamble safely. Providing payslips also means more personal data would be shared with gambling firms, which some campaigners are worried could be misused.
You're basically giving the industry more data on their customers. So that process, that infrastructure should be taken away from the gambling industry. There should be independent oversight of how the industry uses data. It shouldn't be using it to advance commercial objectives. to try to get people to lose more money. It should be using that data to try to reduce gambling-related harm, and that can only happen if there's proper oversight.
The Betting and Gaming Council say they strongly support the government's review and the enhanced spending checks to identify those showing signs of problem gambling, so swift interventions can take place. They also say it's essential these checks are targeted, so they don't interfere with the personal freedoms of the vast majority of people who gamble safely and responsibly. The government's proposals to reform gambling laws are now expected to be published in May of this year. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30 with more details. Here's Lucrezia Millarini.
The Home Secretary warns of the stark challenges that will face the next Commissioner of the Met Police. After Dame Cressida Dick's sudden exit last night, the search is on for a candidate who can tackle confidence and culture within Britain's largest police force. Spain gives the green light for unvaccinated teenagers to visit, but is it too late for half-term? And West Ham manager David Moyes says he will play Kurt Zuma again this weekend. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
But before that, mastering clutch control and biting points must be one of the trickiest aspects of driving lessons. But the gear stick could become a thing of the past in the next 10 years.
Yes, electric cars require no gears and are set to phase out petrol and diesel ones after 2030. So will this present a fundamental change in how we learn to drive? Nick Smith has been investigating.
We may well be in the midst of a so-called electric revolution, but the process of shifting us all to greener motoring isn't necessarily going to be a smooth journey. Driving instructor Marcel Payne from Maidstone says even though we are set to see manufacturers ditch petrol and diesel cars within a decade, the lifespan of the vehicles means plenty will still want to learn in them.
I think it's more about the timescale. Cars, combustion engines are being sold up until 2030. Then they have a lifespan of 14 years after that. So people will still be learning in cars, in combustion engines, way into 2040. So at the moment, I think it's a long time away.
Some are keen to ditch manual cars and embrace a gear-free future. Learner Sienna and her instructor Roger are having lessons in an all-electric vehicle. She's among the 1 in 7 young drivers already choosing to learn in cars with no gearbox.
For me personally, I found it quite hard to deal with clutch control. It was a lot for me to think about, making sure I had the right biting point, the right gear. So I found it easier to be able to focus on more what's around me, like meeting traffic, checking around the roundabouts, traffic lights, to deal with that in an automatic car.
The fact that it's an electric drivetrain doesn't really make that much difference to the process of learning. But you do have to think about, charging the car up and things like that. They're usually quieter. So, that can have an impact on road safety. But the main bulk of what we do as driving instructors doesn't change.
But motoring experts say the replacement of manual cars on our roads will be gradual rather than immediate.
Even though the cut-off is 2030, we will still have many petrol and diesel cars out there, and they will be the cheaper cars. So some young drivers will stick to that. But there's no doubt the way we learn to drive gradually will be changing, and the days of grinding the clutch and grinding the gears will probably be long gone in 20-30 years.
Here at the British Motor Museum, I'm inspecting the vehicles in their collection, dating back from the 1930s.
You've got a familiar sort of H-pattern gear selector.
When drivers were first required to take a test. They show just how the process of driving our cars has evolved in step with technological advancement.
We've come so far. The original cars were essentially horse-drawn carriages, but with a motor put inside them. You had to manually advance and retard the ignition system to get it to go up and down hills. You had hand control throttles. All of the technology that we've had over the decades since it began has all been leading essentially to removing control from humans to the machine which has got more and more technologically advanced.
This electrically powered car and this retro tourer may have around 90 years of technological development between them, but some of the fundamentals remain the same, such as steering, braking and acceleration. It's only when these things become fully automated that the fundamentals of driving will change as we know it. Nick Smith, ITV News.
OK, full speed into the sport now with Sarah gone. Sarah, great season for Brighton. Gill's on the up. Can you bring us more to celebrate this weekend?
Oh, I hope so. We're optimistic, aren't we, Andrew? Thank you. Yes, it's back to the Premier League for Brighton tomorrow after defeat in the FA Cup. And Gillingham's Neil Harris continues his efforts to pull off a great escape from relegation.
Small businesses and local teams, the heart of our communities. eBay sponsors ITV Regional Sport Reports.
Brighton, who currently sit up in 9th place, travel to Watford with the Seagulls looking for a repeat of the reverse fixture when they beat the Hornets 2-0. And despite their decent points tally so far, boss Graham Potter wants more.
We've done quite well in terms of our points accumulation so far, which means we've got 30. But that's not enough for us. We've got a hungry group, I think an ambitious group. And, rather than worry about what may happen in the middle of May, just worry about what happened at the weekend is our approach.
Meanwhile, off the pitch, the Seagulls are inviting supporters to take advantage of a new facility, offering those who find the usual stands too loud or perhaps intimidating. The Inclusion Room is described as a safe and reassuring place to watch matches and a great way to introduce new supporters to the game.
I think it's amazing, to be honest. Like all these blankets or the cushions to help children with myself, like autism, to have the comfort of making them feel more relaxed with the sensory things behind me as well. Helps them have distractions with all the noise levels outside during the matches.
And it's to really serve the purpose of encouraging supporters who might struggle to attend on a match day, really enhancing that experience for somebody with any kind of sensory disability, anything in that space, and giving them the chance to come and experience a match day that we all love doing anyway.
On to the Football League now, where Crawley host Hartlepool and Gillingham have a long trip north to Morecambe. New boss Neil Harris saying he won't be getting carried away with the strides he's made so far to steer the club away from relegation. Since arriving, he's claimed 2 victories and 1 defeat to Ipswich, despite the Gills being the better side.
We have to make sure that we manage games well. The teams look at us and go, well drilled, well organised, big, physical, horrible team to play against, or a real threat as well. And that's ultimately what I want.
Finally, the Gravesend Cyclo Park has been sold for more than £1 million at auction. The council was outbid by a private company. The site, which is just off the A2, has hosted the National Cyclocross Championships. It includes bike tracks with a tarmac run and a challenging mountain bike course. The identity of the new owners not yet been revealed. Many will be watching that space with interest.
Certainly will. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you. Now, from optical illusions to samba bands and lantern parades, Medway's Festival of Light hopes to be the perfect way to kick off the half-term holidays.
While Rochester's historic buildings and landmarks will be turned into works of art as international artists team up with 17 schools to put on the very special event.
Soaking up all of the action for us tonight is Joe Caution.
Well, it's certainly the busiest I've seen Rochester High Street for a very long time. This event, the Festival of Lights, was meant to take place back in November 2020, but like many, has been cancelled because of COVID and been held up. But now they can finally hold it, and you can see just how brilliant it is. 700 odd school children walking through with lanterns as part of a parade here. And actually, it's really seen Rochester become a canvas of art, of international artists and local ones too. Nothing really off limits. Car parks turned into optical illusions, projections launched on the side of some of the iconic landmarks too. So let's talk to some of the people, the brains behind it, a little bit more now. Let's bring you guys in, Paul and Daniel. Paul, I'll start with you. How great is it to have an event like this back in Medway?
Oh, it's amazing. We've been planning this for 2.5 years now, and it was originally going to be part of our marking the 150th anniversary of Dickens. And then COVID hit, so it's brilliant to have this happening now, today. So many people involved, so many organisations involved, really exciting.
So many organisations involved, so much goes into this. Daniel, one of the brains behind it. How hard is it to pull something like this off?
Well, with a supportive council like Medway Council, and Emergency Exit Arts have had years of experience doing this kind of thing, but there's something so wonderful. All these children that haven't been doing school plays, haven't been going out, haven't had end of year proms, everyone's been locked up, and just to have everybody out, they'll never forget this day, so it's fantastic.
Paul, look, obviously a disappointment to see Medway snubbed for the City of Culture bid, but I guess tonight is just a chance to show the judges what they've missed out on.
Yeah, do you know what? Medway has been a place of culture and creativity for hundreds of years, and yeah, it was disappointing not to be on that list, but actually we're still showing the world that we are full of artists and creativity, and our schools are buzzing, and all this kind of, just see behind us, 700 kids with lanterns, amazing, yeah.
Helicopters too, all lit up. Daniel, look, just give people a flavour of what they can expect tonight.
So tonight there's a procession, there's the most amazing projection on the castle by Icon Theatre. You'll see the castle like you've never seen it before. There's a beautiful hourglass structure in Eastgate Gardens. Come down to Medway, come early, and you won't be disappointed.
Well, look, you've heard it there from Paul and Daniel there. We're seeing the bands coming in, and they're going to drown me out very quickly, so I'll wrap up. If you do want to come down and see what's on offer here, it's on today and tomorrow.
Oh, it's just brilliant to see these events back, isn't it? It's such an atmosphere. Now, just before we go to the weekend weather forecast, spare a thought for an American who's just found himself on the Sussex coast.
Yes, it's an American robin. Birdwatchers think he was flying from the USA to Mexico when he was blown thousands of miles off course to Eastbourne. As you can see, he was quite the attraction.
Yes, an American robin has not been seen in this country for at least 10 years. It's a cousin of the red-breasted bird, which is obviously common here in the UK, and it's a symbol of good luck in the United States.
Its colouring is brick red rather than the bright orange familiar to us, and he's got a long journey ahead back to Mexico.
He might stay in Eastbourne, you never know, mightn't he?
It's very nice in Eastbourne.
It's very nice.
Right, will the weather be good for our robin visitor? Let's find out with Helen Plint.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. Quite a sharp gear change through the weekend. We start dry, bright and promising, but by Sunday quickly unravelling. Wet weather out there, strong winds as well, all in all quite a grotty story. High pressure for now, just about holding on, but you can see these waving fronts are starting to make inroads tomorrow, but actually they'll push north before they reach us predominantly. It's the low area of pressure behind it which really will make all the difference by Sunday, driving in those strong gusty winds. In fact, gusts could approach around 50 miles an hour in exposed southern coasts, and as you can see, lots of rain too. That'll turn heavy for a time. In the short term though, well, it's quiet enough. A lot of clearance through this evening. The breeze generally tending to pick up slightly, but at first it'll stay on the chilly side, and actually ahead of that front the milder air starting to work its way in, so you can see from here on in our temperatures set to rise. Quite a different flavour first thing tomorrow morning compared to the cold, frosty conditions of today. So all in all, not at all bad. Enough of a breeze to blow away the cobwebs through the day tomorrow, yes, and that will tend to increase as well. So on the face of it, temperatures doing quite well, but add on that breeze and it'll peg things back. Although that said, it'll stay dry by daylight at least. Lots of sunshine coming through at first, turning a little milky and hazy as the day wears on. Maybe some extra cloud through the afternoon, but not at all bad for Saturday. A quick look then at the times of high water, and in Hastings, for example, it'll be high tide just after 8 o'clock in the morning, and again just after 8:45 tomorrow evening. But for Sunday, as I say, brace yourselves for a fair bit of wet weather, strong winds bustling through as well. For Monday, finally a return of some sunshine, although that said, it'll be a bit cooler.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And that is all from us so far this evening. In a moment, the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
For now, though, from all the team here, thanks so much for watching.
Have a great weekend. Good night.
Bye-bye.